Yeah, we can start.
Okay. All right. So, welcome everyone. So, I'll be talking over the next few weeks about various polynomial families, ending up with the McDonald polynomials. Uh, so, let me share my screen. Since I'm going to switch between various modes, various devices, various softwares, I will share my desktop. Okay, so the plan of the next four lectures, and after discussing with Arun, is the today's lecture. I will cover the Hall-Littlewood polynomials, or symmetric functions. The second lecture, I will cover the Jack polynomials. And the third and the fourth, I'll cover the McDonald polynomials. So, since I don't have much time, I will. This you should think of these as crash courses rather than in oops in any depth. So I will. My plan is to um introduce these families and show you examples and sort of state the important results, important from our point of view. Uh, but I will, I guess, leave most of the proofs either for the exercises or for you to read up. But please do interrupt me with any questions at any point. Okay, so the Hall-Littlewood polynomials are a one-parameter generalization of the Schur function. So I will take off where Amritanshu left off. The Schur polynomials. So they are a class of symmetric functions. Uh, the coefficients, so this parameter is typically denoted T. Um, so recall, so I don't know if I'm going to use the same notation, but I'll use lambda for symmetric functions, for the space of symmetric functions. Over some coefficient ring or field. So it's a lambda q, symmetric functions with coefficients in q. And what we are now going to generalize, what we're going to do now is to generalize this base ring to, so now the base ring is going to be the ring of polynomials in one variable and in this variable t. So we are going to have symmetric functions where the coefficients are polynomials. Okay, so and we denote a set of symmetric polynomials in x1 up to xn with coefficients in zt as lambda joint. Okay, and oh, sorry, lambda sub n joint t, and the infinite generalized and the generalization to infinitely many variables as lambda. Okay, so let me start with the first definition. So in keeping with the theme of the workshop, the first definition will be highly unmotivated, but you will see that things become nice once you start investigating it. Okay, so the motivation for this comes from the Hall algebra, but I admit to knowing very little about that. So I will directly start off with this definition. There are other ways to define it, but I'll mention it maybe towards the end of the day. So define R lambda x1 up to xn semicolon t. So this is going to be our notation. We are going to have our polynomial variables first and then semicolon followed by other parameters. So this is the sum over permutations in Sn. Sigma acting on, okay, so I should have said this before. So backtrack a little. So for lambda in the set of partitions, length of lambda less than or equal to n, so that lambda you can write as lambda 1, lambda 2. So recall that lambda is a weakly decreasing sequence of integers, of non-negative integers. So if lambda has length smaller than n, you pad it with zeros. Okay, that's clear. So sigma acts on the following. So x1 to the lambda 1, x2 to the lambda 2, and so on, xn to the lambda n, times this product 1 less than or equal to I less than j less than or equal to n, xi minus txj divided by xi minus xj. Okay, so where sigma, it doesn't really matter, but just to be precise, we say sigma acts on the indices of lambda. You could as well make it act on the indices of the x, but you'll get the same answer, but just to be precise, we say.
So there's no sign in that?
No sign in that. The sign will come
from the numerator, is it?
No, the sign will come from the denominator. I'll explain. Yeah, this is a good question. So recall again from Amri's lectures that A delta, this is the product of xi minus xj, is the Vandermonde determinant.
Hello, sir.
Yes?
So sigma has no effect on that product term, right?
Sorry?
Sigma has no effect on that product term?
Which product term?
That definition of R lambda, because it's action over indices of lambda, right?
Yes. So, for example, the permutation 2, 1 will cause it to make it x1 to the lambda 2, x2 to the lambda 1, everything else.
Yeah, and that product term has no effect.
The product will also change. Oh, sorry, product will not change. I apologize. Oh, wait,
yeah.
sorry. Yes, sorry, I should have. Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
want it.
Sorry, yes, thank you. Yeah.
Will it pick up a sign or something? X1 minus 2x2 will.
Exactly. Yeah. So I made a mistake. Sorry. Yeah. Thanks for asking that. Yeah. So I really need a sigma to act on the indices of x, not on the indices of lambda. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So yeah. So that's what I was about to say. So now when you see what sigma does to the denominator does not depend on lambda, but it will pick up a sign depending on the sign of sigma. So therefore you can rewrite. So we can rewrite r lambda of x1 to xn t. I pull the 1 by a delta out and I sum over permutations in Sn, and now I pick up a sign. And now sigma acts on x1 to the lambda 1 to xn to the lambda n product. I'll just write I less than j, xi minus, oops, xi minus txt. Yeah. Okay, is that okay? So we get a homogeneous symmetric polynomial in x1 up to xn over here, which is divisible by a lambda. Well, sorry, I get a skew symmetric polynomial in x1 up to xn, and therefore this in the numerator, and therefore it's going to be divisible by xi minus xj for each I and j, and therefore divisible by a delta, and at the end I will get a symmetric polynomial. So say that. So the ratio is a symmetric, is a homogeneous symmetric polynomial. In x1 up to xn of degree. Well, what's the degree? I'll have a size of lambda, which is lambda 1 plus up to lambda n, plus I have this n choose to many terms over here, and I have n choose to over here, so I'll have degree exactly mod lambda, which is of course sigma I lambda. Yeah, with coefficients in which are polynomials. So let's do an example. So let me do n equals 2 and lambda partition of 2. So there are two cases. So let's do R2 of x1, x2, t. So what do I get? So the partition 2 you should think of as the partition 2 comma 0, right? Where there are two, it's n equals 2, so I need to pad it. And then the identity permutation gives you a plus sign, and so I'll get x1 squared x2 to the 0 times, there's only one factor here because n is 2, I has to be 1, j has to be 2. So I'll get my first term is x1 squared x2 to the 0 x1 minus tx2, and the other term is the transposition to 1. So then I'll get x1 to the 0 x2 squared, and then I'll get x2 minus tx1. Okay? And this comes with a minus. So x1 to the 0 x2 squared, x2 minus tx1, and of course this is divided by a delta, which is x1 x2. And if you do the computation, I'll leave it for you, you'll get x1 squared plus 1 minus t x1 x2 plus x2 squared. Okay, and let me do the other permutation also. This is going to be illustrative. So that's a 1 comma 1. R11 of x1 x2. Now both have exponent 1. I have x1 to the 1, x2 to the 1. This part remains the same. Minus x1 to the 1, x2 to the 1, x2 minus tx1 divided by x1 minus x2. Right? And now if you see, both these terms will give the same contribution, and I'll get 1 plus t times x1 plus 2. Okay. So what is the general structure of these R lambdas? So let me explain that. So let me recall some notation. I don't know if Amri defined the t integers. So recall that n t is 1 minus t to the n 1 minus t, which is 1 plus t, etc. plus t to the n minus 1, the definition. And one usually uses q instead of t, but we are going to have a q later, so it's better to use t. So the factorial of so this is an analog of the integer m. If you set t equal to 1, you will get m, and this is the natural analog of the factorial. So this is n t and t minus 1 up to n. Okay, another notation I will need is the frequency notation for lambda. So
Sorry,
That is
yes,
m
is
minus
there?
sorry.
Is this the things inside the box are all the same, or they should be?
Oh, sorry. God. Sorry, the t should be the same. Yeah, sorry. I reduced in the wrong index. 1 t is of course. Okay, so I know Amri has introduced the frequency notation for a partition, but I prefer to write it slightly differently. So any partition can be written in frequency notation or exponential notation as lambda equals, I'll use angular brackets to distinguish from the other notation, partwise notation, 1 to the m1, 2 to the m2, etc. So this says that 1 occurs m1 times, 2 occurs m2 times, and here it's conventional. Again, it's a bit of a pain, but it's conventional to write it in increasing order, partly because we don't have an upper. Okay, so then let v lambda of t is the product of I greater than or equal to 0 of these mi, these multiplicities. Mi t factorials. So I take the multiplicities, the m stands for multiplicity, and I'm taking the factorial, the t analogs, and the. Okay, so then here is the theorem.
What's m0?
Sorry?
What's m0?
M0 by convention is 1.
Achha. Here.
Oh, sorry. What do you mean M0?
In the v lambda of t, you take the product over I equals 0 as well, but in the lambda, there is no m0 in frequency notation.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Okay, so here's the theorem about the expansion of R lambda. So R lambda of x1 up to xn t can be expanded over partitions mu. So there's some coefficient u lambda mu of t in the Schur basis S mu of x1 up to xn, where u lambda mu of t belongs to Z. So it says that R lambda has a polynomial expansion. I mean, as an expansion in the S mu's where the coefficients are polynomials in T with integer coefficients, and u lambda mu of T, maybe I should put a comma just to remind you that this is two indices, is 0 unless mod lambda equals mod mu. So they have the same size. So this is a homogeneous expansion. And lambda is greater than or equal to mu. This is in the dominance order, which Amri has already defined. Okay, I will show you all of this in Sage very soon. So this is part one. But the second part is that u lambda lambda, the diagonal coefficient is v lambda. This v lambda. Okay, so I will, as I said before, I will skip the proof, but I will demonstrate all of this very soon. But the point, of this as a corollary is that r lambda of x1 up to xn t is going to be divisible. So it's not a corollary of the statement, it's a corollary. It's divisible by v. Okay, so if you go above, so let's look at this R11. What is v lambda of t? So here, this 1, 1, maybe I'll use another color. This can be written as 1 squared, 2 to the 0, 3 to the 0, etc. Everybody else to the 0. And so what is so I need 2 of t, 2 sub t, and this is just 1 plus t. And 1 of t, as I told you, is just 1. So 2 factorial of t is also 1 plus t. And so R11 of t is some prefactor which will in general be common to all monomials times some polynomial with integer coefficients. Okay, and that is going to motivate our definition of the first Hall-Littlewood symmetric function. So the Hall-Littlewood symmetric function of polynomial p lambda is defined as p lambda of x1 up to xn t. So right now it's just a polynomial. This is 1 by v lambda of sum over permutations as before, sigma of x1 to the lambda 1, xn to the lambda n, product I less than j, xi minus txj, where xn minus xj. Okay. There's an equivalent definition. So, let sigma let Sn lambda be the set of all sigma in Sn such that sigma lambda is lambda. That is, these are fixed points of lambda. So if lambda is 1 in frequency notation, 1 to the m1, 2 to the m2, etc., then Sn is the set of permutations which are which only interact. In which the first m1 places don't do anything. Act arbitrarily. First m2 positions, then the next m2 positions act arbitrarily, and so on. Right? Because you cannot have any action that crosses this. Has an interaction between any of these guys. So Sn lambda is going to be a direct product of Sm1 cross Sm2 right? And
Maybe
then,
here you want M0 also, right? Because you have padded lambda to have some zeros.
yes,
So if you just throw in 0 raised to M0, I think this is.
yeah, thanks. Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, let me do that. Yeah, that is probably why I needed that 0 before. Yeah, put that here.
You need it here.
Yeah, so I needed it, and then so maybe I should say,
So if we look at the example with 2, the partition 2, then that has one M0 equal to 1, I guess.
yeah, this partition, so this example, right? Yeah.
But of course, then we don't notice
Then
it.
there is no issue because multiplicities are wrong. Yeah.
Sorry, Arun, just quick question. If you go to the previous slide,
Sure.
I missed it here. The corollary.
Corollary. Yeah.
Why?
So from the proof, you can actually see that each one of these coefficients is going to be divisible by V.
The proof shows that. Okay.
The proof shows that.
Okay, thanks.
Sir, on the definition of R, then if you R lambda, if you take t equals to 1, so what you get? So you are really generalizing the monomial symmetric function.
Good, good, very good. I'm coming to that. Yes, very good. Yes, I'm exactly coming to that. Okay, so let me finish. I'll come to you in a second. So unfortunately, in my version of Zoom, I cannot see anybody, so I can't make out who's asking. But yeah, oops. I'll come to all of this very soon. So P lambda can alternately be defined, if you are so inclined, as the sum, instead of summing over all sigma in overall Sn, you take over the Young subgroup Sn mod Sn lambda and the same action. So x1 to the lambda 1 up to Sn. Product over I less than j, xi minus txj. Sorry, that's a minus. Divided by xi minus x.
And the P lambda is just R lambda by V lambda, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. That's one way to see it, and the other way is to see it as the sum. Okay, so let me show you on Sage. So as I sent you an email, I have created this workshop, and sorry, I've created this project on CoCalc, and everybody can access this workshop. Some of you have already joined. I will use, I'll do things locally simply because CoCalc can be very, very slow. So, okay, so let me show you how to work with Hall Littlewood polynomials on Sage. So, so if you remember Amri's tutorial demonstration, he defined symmetric functions over the ring Q, but that will not suffice for us because we will need to work with polynomials in T. But just to be safe, one works just it's convenient to take our field as the field of fractions in T. Okay, so that's symmetric functions with those variables. There's a very useful command in Sage to simultaneously define all the basic symmetric functions in one shot. So the elementary, the forgotten ones, which you don't need to worry about, the complete homogeneous ones, monomial ones, the power sums, and the Schur's. So this command defines it in one shot. Okay, so now how do you do it? So there are several Hall Littlewood polynomials. What we do is do sim.Hall Littlewood, then you do dot p. So this is the p fellows that we want. And let me show you the two examples that we saw. So if you go back to the example. So if you look at R2 in two variables, this was x1 squared plus x2 squared. That's the monomial symmetric function in the variable, I mean, in the partition 2, indexed by the partition singleton 2, times you have a 1 minus t times the partition 1. So as you might know, Sage works with infinitely many variables by default, but you can see this in two variables. This is exactly what we had. And if you do 1, 1, you will see x0, x1. So here, without, if I just expand it out, I'll just get m1, 1. And this is going to be related to something that we will see soon. Okay, so just to give you a feel for things. Okay, so another thing I can do, okay, we'll come to that later. So let us look at all the monomial expansion of all Hall-Littlewood polynomials for partitions of 4, and these are there, and you can see that the coefficients don't look particularly nice. So there are signs, and it's not immediately clear what their structure is.
Is it possible to increase the font size a bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let me do that. Is this better? Sorry, yeah. Is this better, Gaurav?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So, since we, in the first theorem was about the Schur expansion, you can see this as well. So I have now expanded in Schur's, and now you see maybe the coefficients are a little bit simpler. And you can see that the leading coefficient is 1. By leading coefficient, I mean the coefficient for the partition that we are running over. So just to show you, so let's list partitions of 4. So the first one is of the partition 4. The second is of 3, 1. You can see the coefficients are always going to be 1, 2, 2, 2, 1, 1. And this is because we have divided by V lambda from R lambda. Okay, over here. Yeah. Okay, so good. Now I'm coming to the other question just asked. So if we set t equal to 1 in the second definition, is this one, you'll see that these factors will all cancel. So you get p lambda of x1 to xn 1 is sum over sigma in Sn mod Sn lambda. This is sigma acting on x1 to the lambda 1 up to xn to the lambda n only. And now you can see what it's doing. It's just it's just going to give you one term per monomial, and so this is going to be exactly n lambda. Okay. So so this I can also show you. So this advantage also Sage has. So suppose you wanted, so t here is arbitrary, but suppose you want to work with t equals 1. So I defined this HLP1. This is my new symmetric functions, if you like, and you can see their description. They are over fractional field, blah blah blah, but with t equals 1. Okay, and now if I expand HLP1 in the monomial basis, I get exactly the monomial symmetry, as it should. So this is really another name for M. It's really an alias. Okay, another property that you might have noticed, if you put, so if we set t equals 0 in the first definition, this one. So if you say t equals 0, what is going to happen is that you'll get e lambda of x1 up to xn 0. Okay, then I should say then v lambda of 0. Oops, sorry. So that factor drops out. 1 by v lambda drops out. So I get sum over sigma in Sn. And let me take the 1 by a delta outside. Sine of sigma. Then sigma acting on x1 to the lambda 1 plus n minus 1. X2 to the lambda 2 plus n minus, n minus 2, all the way up to xn to the lambda n plus 0. And this you can see, this is clearly a determinant expansion. And what is it a determinant of? This is exactly a lambda plus delta, as Amri defined it, divided by a delta. And so you get the Schur function. Okay. So P lambda interpolates between the monomials and the Schurs. So monomials at t equals 1, Schurs at t equals 2. Okay, so we can check that also. So now let me define HIP of 0. It's a new class of symmetric function. Oops. I'll just do everything again. And now if I expand over this, I'll get something complicated. But now if I expand in terms of the Schurs, I'll get the Schurs. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So,
sorry, Amri, could you just show the construction in the Sage again? Do you have to specify the variable while?
Here, no. If it's only one variable, it will understand.
But you put 0 there.
Yeah. You just put the variable. So you can also do -1, for example. The -1 specialization is also an important class of. These are called Schur's Q functions. That's another specialization. You just do -1.
Is there anything interesting at infinity? Meaning we disregard the xi and just look at the xj's in the numerator.
I would guess there is
reverse order. I mean, you could.
Yeah, I would guess there is some duality. I would maybe guess that up to a sign, because the setting t equal to 0 is going to kill this and keep this, and setting t equal to infinity is going to kill this.
Not the first one, yeah. But the lambdas are not reversible, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Does anybody else know? I don't know. I can try and check it out. Maybe I'll figure it out and put it in the exercise.
What was the question? Sorry.
At t equal to infinity.
What happens as t in the limit t goes to infinity? What do you get? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Okay. Another thing I wanted to point out is stability. So, I'm going really slow. Okay, so stability. So, proposition, let's say. Let lambda be a partition with length less than or equal to n. Then, if I take p lambda in n plus 1 variables, and set the last one to be 0, then I get the same as p lambda of h1 x. Okay. So this means, again, I'm not proving this. So, but this is not hard to see from the definition. So maybe I'll leave it as an exercise. Use the definition. Either one. So what does this imply? So this means that the number of variables, so thus the number of variables is irrelevant in some sense. And so the infinite variable limit makes sense. So infinite variable.
And moreover, the theorem that you mentioned with the structure constants also makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
And therefore, you can put infinitely many variables there and realize the same thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. But note, this is not true for the R lambdas. So the first thing that we defined does not have the stability property. This R lambda. But when you factor out by this V lambda, you know things become much nicer. Okay, and it's kind of easy to see, and it can be rectified also, which we will also do soon. Okay. So because of the first theorem about the expansion of R lambda using this dominance order, you get that the p lambdas form a basis by the first theorem. The transition matrix from P to S is upper unitriangular, that is upper triangular with identity on the diagonal, and thus we have the following proposition, corollary if you like. P lambda of x t, here I mean infinitely many variables, lambda in P form a ZT basis of lambda. Okay, so it's a nice basis. Okay, another exercise, maybe I will add this, is the special case when you take the partition 1, 1, 1, 1. So if you take 1 to the R of xt, now I am not specifying the number of variables, this is the elementary symmetric function. So when you have all ones, like in our first example for size 2, you will only have the factor of t will only be outside, and then you will get an elementary symmetric function. So this was what I added over here. So this is another check. So now I'm taking the original Hall-Littlewood polynomial with t. When I take the partition 1 times n, which just means 1, 1, 1, 1 n times, and for different values of n, and you will get the elementary symmetric function. Okay. I wonder what happens if I do this. I think it will. Okay, so it gives in the stupid way, but if I expand in the E basis, I get this. All right. Okay, so any questions about this? So I'm moving now to the other family of.
Yeah, sir, I have one question. Actually, do you not have to specify at t equal to 1 for getting the elementary symmetric polynomials?
Sorry? Say that again?
Do you not have to specify at t equal to 1
No,
to
no,
get
T is
ERs?
not one here. No, 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 no. This is P lambda. T is arbitrary. But the answer
Okay,
is
okay.
independent of T.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So you're dividing by the V lambda already. The
Exactly.
does not
So the V lambda completely kills all the dependence in T is in that V lambda. And that goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So now I'm moving on to the next family of symmetric functions. So, so the P lambda is one natural generalization of the.
So the corollaries that you obtained above P lambda x comma 1 and x comma 0 would also therefore make sense for infinitely many variables.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I mean, this holds in general, so one can just do it.
Right.
Okay, so now I'm going to. Okay, let me see how did I. Yeah. So now I'll define the Hall Littlewood polynomials of type Q. Okay, so.
Sorry, so
Yeah. Question?
the previous Hall Littlewood polynomials were of type 1, you said?
No, P lambda. So
they're going to be Q. Okay.
Yeah, it will be Q.
And also in the theorem, as you said, the theorem makes sense. I mean, for when you divide out by V lambda and then take infinitely many variables.
Yeah.
So then, is there a name for those structure constants? Structure constant polynomials? Like here for R lambda, they were U lambdas, and now they're U lambda divided by V lambda. So
yeah, I mean, right now we are not giving them a name. So this is related to the what are called the Koska-Fuchs polynomials. I'll come to that.
Okay, thanks.
If not today, tomorrow. I mean, next lecture. Okay. So the Hall Littlewood polynomials. Q lambda are defined as, I mean, this is the other way to rectify the problem of the non-stability of R lambda. Remember I said R lambdas are not stable. So one way is to just kill that factor, but the other way is to multiply it by some other coefficient to make it behave stably. So Q lambda of xt, I'll again define it directly with our infinitely many variables, is B lambda of t times P lambda of xt. So it's just a product independent of x of the times the P lambdas, where B lambda of t is V lambda of t times 1 minus t to the L lambda. So R lambda was P lambda times V lambda, and now if you just multiply by this other factor, you get the nice property that we want. Okay, and you can write it also if product I greater than equal to 1. Now since I'm using infinitely many variables, so this is mi of lambda t factorial 1 minus t to the all of yeah. So when you just expand it out, this part will give you V lambda, this part. Okay, so these in some sense are nicer, and to explain that I'll need some special cases. So
Is here also M0 plays some role? So if you need I greater than 0,
Sorry?
here also do you need M greater I greater than 0?
Well, if you like, okay, fine. I don't really. I mean, now we are using infinitely many variables, but okay, it doesn't hurt to it. Okay, so first proposition is for the one single row partition. So this is so useful that we'll give it another name. So let me do directly. So QR of x t. This is by definition Q of the singleton partition R of x t. Sorry, maybe. Sorry, I'll fix n variables. So QR of x1 up to xn t, which is Q of, as I said, the singleton partition R. This is going to be equal to 1 minus t times the sum I equals 1 to n xi to the r. Actually, it's not really a proposition. J not equal to I, xi minus txj divided by xi minus xj. Right.
Arvind,
Yeah.
this is Raghavan here.
Yeah.
So this, I am not comfortable when you change that I equal to bigger than or equal to 1 to I bigger than, because there is 1 minus t to the power mi lambda. So, so something changes. Maybe your definition of L lambda changes, something changes. You cannot have both.
Yeah, that's true. Oh. So, that's true. Right, because I'm using infinitely many variables, maybe as I said, I prefer to stick to one. So lambda is 1.
But I suppose if you count certain zeros, then you include them in the length, then it may be all right. I'm just guessing by.
I mean, there. Okay, so maybe if one wants to be absolutely pedantic, one has I greater than or equal to 0 here and I greater than or equal to 1 here. Because I cannot have I greater than or equal to 0 here because there'll be infinite. M0 will be infinite, right? If I have infinity. So, but maybe let's just stick to M greater than or equal to 1.
No, I thought M0 by convention is 0.
No, M0 is the multiplicity of 0. It's not 0.
Number of paddings by 0 you need in a finite stage, right?
Yeah. So since we are working here with infinitely many variables, I prefer not.
So by the way, even the Q upstairs is in infinitely many variables, right?
Yeah, here also. So when I write x instead of x1 up to xn.
And is that Q stable?
Yes, that's the point. Yes, that's what I said. Yeah. So
that's the way to rectify, you said, for
yeah.
other to rectify.
Right. So if you just have this v lambda bit, it's not going to be stable. And I leave it for you to think about why it's so. And if you add this, it becomes stable.
Okay.
Okay. And so this is kind of elementary to prove.
So, I mean, the same, this is Amri, the same lambda can be written with different paddings, right?
Well, if you have n fixed, if you have the number of variables fixed, yes. No, then you don't have a choice of the padding. I mean, if n is fixed and lambda has length less than or equal to n, then you'll have 0, whatever, n minus L lambda times.
And somehow, once you take infinitely many variables, then you should imagine that there are no zeros.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
That's what Venkatesh said when he said M0 is 0.
Oh, sorry, that's what
Venkatesh said. But the other option would be, I feel that if you choose certain zeros, then you count it in the length.
If yes,
then you should just count those M0, how many times you're putting zeros, just count them in the length of lambda. And
No,
length
no,
of
no,
lambda,
that's
define
fine.
that to be M0 plus M1 plus M2, etc.
No. L lambda is M1 plus M2 plus M3. So that is sacrosanct, and you can't mess
Oh,
up.
okay. Okay.
So this is M1 plus M1 plus M2. Yeah, this is fine. You cannot have M0 here. Okay, even if n is larger than n. Is that okay? All right,
Arvind, here it's j not equal to I, not I less than j, right?
yes, here it is j not equal to I. That's why it's a proposition. Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to show. Okay. Okay, so now I want to give two formulas. Okay, so I want to give two non-trivial formulas for Q lambda. Okay, so first of all, let me define some notation. Where is that? Okay, so first theorem. So I don't need much notation for this. So there's a very nice generating function for the Q lambda. So let U1, U2, etc. be indeterminates, commuting indeterminates, independent indeterminates. Then Q lambda of x t is the coefficient of u1 to the lambda 1, u2 to the lambda 2, etc. in the following product formula. In the product I greater than or equal to 1, h of ui divided by h of tui times the product I less than j of ui minus uj divided by ui minus tuj. This is not a typo, t is downstairs. Where h of t is the generating function for the homogeneous symmetric polynomials which Amri had defined. In his first lecture, I think. Yeah, here. Oh no, this is using h of t. Where is h of t? Here it is. So it's a product over 1 minus x. 1 by 1 minus x. I agree. Okay. So you expand this out and you take the coefficient of u1 to the lambda 1, etc. Then you get, of course, these are symmetric. So, we take one of them. So you take it in decreasing order, weakly decreasing order, and you take the coefficient and you get. Okay, so this is a somewhat technical result, not completely easy, but so this is one expansion. So the generating function of these guys, this infinite variable generating function, is nice. It has this full product expansion. To define the other, to give the other formula for, I just realized I'm out of time. So let me just give you the second formula for Q lambda and I'll stop there. I'm going slower than I thought. But so remember we have defined these QRs, right? Okay. So now for a weak composition, so we call. I don't have to define the composition. Okay, so for alpha n to the, a sequence of non-negative integers, writing alpha as alpha 1 up to alpha m, define q alpha to be q alpha, which depends on x and t. This is the product over I greater than or equal to 1, or q alpha I of x t. So this is this is different from q lambda. It's just taking individual entries over here. Okay, so now you have the sequence. So there's McDonald defines this notion of raising lowering operator. So for 1 less than or equal to I less than j less than or equal to m, define the raising lowering operator Rij which maps alpha to alpha 1 up to alpha I minus 1. So this I and j are the indices. So it raises I alpha I plus 1 up to alpha j minus 1 and alpha j minus 1. So it lowers the j index, alpha j plus 1 up to alpha. Okay, so it simultaneously raises this index and raises the value of the ith index and lowers the value of the jth index, provided it makes sense. Otherwise, it gives you 0. So if this alpha j were already 0, you would get 0. Okay.
So you would get 0 only in that position or throughout?
No, you will get 0. Yeah, 0 throughout.
The 0 tuple. Okay.
Yeah, 0 tuple. Yeah. Okay. So the McDonald's theorem. Another theorem. So q lambda is the product I less than j 1 minus Rij divided by 1 minus T Rij acting on q. So this is an operator. It acts on q lambda, where q lambda is the product of these q lambda i's, and it acts by this Rij's, and it gives you q.
So this is like multiply by one variable and differentiate with respect to another variable.
Sorry.
This is like multiplying by xi and differentiating with.
Why do you say that?
There's some coefficients, I guess, or something. And so that if you differentiate with xj and the degree was 0, you would just get 0 throughout.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, but there are coefficients. But anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Maybe I'm over time, so I should stop here.
There's some confusion in the small q's. I mean, now you have infinitely many variables.
Yes, I have infinitely many variables. Why is that here I want alpha to be a weak composition. Okay, so that is to say I want when I take the infinite limit, I want the size of alpha to be finite. So alpha 1 plus up to whatever should be finite. Okay, is that okay, Gaurav?
I mean, earlier what was Q alpha I then? What is Q alpha?
QR was defined here. Yeah. So QR is this Q with the partition singleton R. And I take a product of those.
So here you're allowing now infinite variables.
Oh, here. Yes, that's right. Or rather, I'm taking the stable limit of Q. So, okay, so maybe I'll clarify that. QR of xt is Q. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to show how little would Q polynomials also. So here I defined them. So using HLQ. So again, sim.hall_littlewood.q gives you the Hall-Littlewood Q polynomials. I can show you the transition matrix, let's say in 3. So with respect to the P Hall-Littlewood P polynomials, and you'll see that they are just diagonal matrices because they're just defined that way. We can do it in other bases and so on. So you will have the factors will look much more complicated because, I mean, the entries will look much more complicated because you have this extra b lambda of t hanging around, which distinguishes p from q. Okay, I had some other things to show you, but maybe I've run out of time, so maybe I'll stop here.
Any more questions or comments?
I can stop sharing, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
I have one comment on this raising operator.
Sorry?
I have one comment about this raising operator.
Tell me.
So, it is actually introduced by Robinson in his 1938 paper, where he first described that RSK correspondence, right? Robinson's correspondence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's there? Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
I mean, and actually, he defined the Sur function in terms of Robinson raising operator.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And also maybe the state model construction for SN, that also defined in terms of this operator.
Sure. Yeah, no, what I meant was I should have said this at the beginning. So I'm following this book by McDonald, the other book, maybe in some sense more influential book called Symmetric Functions and Hall Polynomials.
Yeah, this is the book. I was following the other book.
Sorry?
Yeah, McDonald.
This is the book. I was following the other book.
Yeah. This is the Bible, I feel like, for me.
Yeah, you will see Littlewood Richardson coefficient proofs, that means Euler rules proof. You will in this book they proved by raising operator, using raising operator.
Okay, I see. Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Sir, can you please show the book once again? Missed.
I can show it any number of times.
Symmetric functions and Hall polynomial. Yeah, thank you.
So how hard is it to go from here to the inner product characterization that I gave?
So it will turn out that for the inner product you gave.
One second. Before you answer that, Amri, could you clarify the question? Inner product characterization of what you gave for the Schiff function, but what do you mean exactly?
I gave an inner product characterization for Hall-Littlewood symmetric functions.
Oh, you did. Okay. Could you recall that before you answer?
So upper triangularity plus a certain
Certain inner
value
product.
for the inner product on these. So they form an orthonormal basis with respect to a deformed version of the inner product. I can bring up the exact deformation if you give me a minute.
No, I have it already. I can show you. This is Amri's lectures. So
Yeah.
So this is the P lambda that he mentioned.
So we see your -1 raised to T lambda I.
No, that will come. I have not yet reached there. I'm
Yeah.
being slower than I. Whatever. But these two I mentioned today. P lambda at 0 is S lambda. P lambda at 1 is.
So will you be doing this next time or?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I should be a little fast. But I would appreciate any comments on pace. Am I too slow?
No, I think for me it was perfect.
Okay. I mean, if you, yeah. Sorry, Arun, then I will not maybe be able to cover as much as I wanted if I go at this pace.
That's okay. That's okay.
But Amrit, yeah, so I'll show in the next class. So just like you showed that Schurs are self-dual in your inner product, here the P lambdas and Q lambdas will be dual. So both reduce to Schurs as T goes to 0. But in the generalization, the P lambdas are not self-dual. This is part of the.
Okay, yeah. So there's no self-dual thing. I mean,
not that I know. No.
Is there a?
You could artificially take some, you know.
No. But you need some triangularity also, right?
Yeah.
It's triangularity and orthogonality, but there's a constant in the inner product. Z lambda of some number.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm just a bit confused now. Arvind said these are not self-dual. P and Q are dual to each other.
Yeah, so P lambdas are orthogonal, not orthonormal.
Right.
That's what Arun is.
So when you say, okay, so they're already orthogonal. So if you want to make them self-dual, you could do some square root something.
Yeah, but then you go outside.
You can't. Okay.
That leaves me a bit confused. This could be a stupid question. You know, it specializes to M lambda as well, right?
Yes, at T equals 1.
And those are not self-dual.
No.
So how do you explain that? Maybe so if these are these are orthogonal.
The inner product is depending on T.
Yeah.
So the M lambdas, they are self-dual, but at a very strange value of T.
Okay. Thanks for that explanation. Yeah. Okay.
No, in particular, there is a 1 minus T power thing in the denominator. So you cannot set T equals 1.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, if there are no more comments, let's thank Arvind.